I caught my girlfriend of 10 years cheating with my best friend at his luxury beachfront resort wedding, but then discovered all of our friends knew and had been laughing about it behind my back. So I pretended I didn't know and dropped this bombshell during his wedding ceremony, destroying not just his wedding, but his entire carefully constructed life. During graduate school, I was part of a tight-knit research group in the biochemistry department. Over the years since graduation, we've maintained our connection. There were 8 of us, 5 women and 3 men. One of the guys, let's call him Danny, was my lab partner, and we became absolutely inseparable. He's been my closest friend since our research days, and recently I attended his destination wedding, which is where everything imploded. From this group, I had also been dating one of the women for the past decade. Let's call her Annie. For context, Annie was originally closer to these people, but after we started dating, I naturally became integrated into the group, as did Danny. We began dating during our second year of graduate studies. I was 24 then. Over these 10 years, we've grown together, weathered difficult times, but always managed to work things out. For the past year and a half, I'd been discussing marriage with Annie, but she kept insisting she wasn't prepared. I found this peculiar because both of us were exceptionally successful in our careers. I had transformed my father's struggling pharmaceutical research company into a thriving biotech firm over the past 3 years, while she excelled as a molecular research director. We'd even shared a luxury penthouse for the past 5 years, so I couldn't comprehend why formalizing our relationship seemed so difficult. I value professional achievement, and I also yearned to build a family, and Annie and I had been arguing intensely about this recently. She insisted I was rushing things, which made absolutely no sense given our decade-long relationship. She kept emphasizing that I needed to focus more on expanding the company internationally, which was equally absurd since I was already more successful than anyone in our circle. Countless executives manage thriving careers while having families, and I was more than prepared to do the same. It became increasingly clear that she was avoiding marriage simply because she didn't want to commit to me, despite our 10-year relationship. This realization deeply hurt me, leading to frequent arguments over the past few months. Yet, despite these challenges, we hadn't separated. Given her behavior, it never occurred to me that infidelity might be the real issue. She seemed completely normal otherwise. Either she would apologize or I would, but I always believed we'd find our way back to each other. That belief shattered at Danny's wedding when I discovered she had likely been unfaithful for who knows how long. The crushing revelation was that she'd been cheating with my best friend, the groom himself. I uncovered this devastating truth just days before, catching them in an intimate embrace in the resort's private beach cabana, of all places. Instead of confronting them immediately, I chose a more theatrical approach, deciding to humiliate him publicly. For context, Annie and I had flown to the Maldives resort, where Danny was getting married. We arrived the day before for the wedding, and that evening we were supposed to attend the rehearsal dinner. I was exhausted from the long-haul flight and suffering from one of my chronic migraines, so I opted to skip it. Later that night, my migraine intensified, and realizing I'd forgotten my prescription during packing, I headed to the beachfront to clear my head. That's how I stumbled upon them in the private cabana. I stood there for perhaps 2 minutes, watching them through the cabana's sheer curtains, illuminated by the moonlight. They were so engrossed in each other they never noticed my presence. After the initial shock subsided, I quietly retreated, my mind spinning. I decided to seek support from Sage, another friend in our group, hoping she could help me process what I'd witnessed and find the courage to confront them both. Instead, as I approached her oceanfront villa, I heard multiple voices from inside, Our entire group was gathered there, and coincidentally, they were discussing Danny and Annie. Not only were they talking about them, but they were also actually laughing about how oblivious I was to everything. They knew. They had all known, covering up for the two of them this entire time. Jasper, another researcher from our group, joked about how they were bound to get caught eventually, given how careless they'd become with their rendezvous, even during the wedding preparations. Apparently, they had even hooked up in my personal lab when I had gone home early during Danny's engagement celebration. Everyone found this hilarious, and I was horrified by how casually they discussed my personal tragedy, as if my feelings were completely irrelevant. I silently backed away from the door. Fortunately, they were too intoxicated on expensive resort cocktails to notice my presence. That night was undoubtedly the worst of my life, but after 15 minutes of private breakdown in the resort's meditation garden, I decided to maintain my composure because I had already begun formulating my plan. When Annie finally returned to our suite, I acted completely normal, and we went to sleep without any discussion. The next day, the day of the wedding, I greeted everyone with my usual warmth. Everything proceeded smoothly until I stood up right before the beachfront ceremony was scheduled to begin. In front of the assembled guests, I announced that I wanted to make a speech honoring my friend. This wasn't the traditional protocol, and I noticed several puzzling expressions, but Danny, probably anticipating some heartfelt tribute, allowed it. Of course, as soon as they realized where my speech was heading, they tried desperately to silence me. It was easier for Annie, since she was seated right beside me. She kept trying to pull me down and shut me up, as if that could possibly help their situation now. Danny completely lost control, starting to shout accusations about how I was merely jealous of him, claiming I was trying to ruin his wedding because my girlfriend wouldn't marry me, suggesting I was attempting to steal his moment of glory. But he oversold his performance, becoming far too defensive, which only made his fiancée, Sienna, more inclined to believe my words. When she realized the truth, she quietly stood up from her decorated beach chair and walked away from the ceremony. As soon as Danny registered that he'd been abandoned at the altar, he started running after her across the sand, and the entire event descended into absolute chaos. I couldn't have cared less about any of it at that point. I simply shook off Annie's desperate grip on my arm, made my way to the resort parking area where I'd already hidden my packed bags before the ceremony, and drove to the airport for the next flight home. 3 days passed without any contact, but then yesterday, Annie messaged me saying that while she and Danny had been wrong, what I did was absolutely psychotic because I hadn't just ruined the wedding, I destroyed his life. Apparently, his parents have completely disowned him, and Sienna has already ended their engagement. Now he's effectively homeless because he had been counting on this marriage to solve his financial problems. For a more explicit explanation, Danny is nothing but a calculated gold digger, and this wedding had been an elaborate scam from the very beginning. He and Sienna hadn't met through mutual friends 6 months ago as they'd claimed to everyone. They actually connected through an exclusive dating platform for wealthy singles. Sienna, who's 7 years older than him, faced an ultimatum from her billionaire family: either settle down in a respectable marriage or risk losing her massive trust fund to her more responsible younger brother. Because of this pressure, she was desperately searching for someone, but truthfully had zero interest in a traditional marriage. She'd been looking for a partner who would accept an open relationship arrangement, but hadn't found anyone suitable until she matched with Danny on the dating app. He quickly devised a plan that could benefit them both. Danny had no real interest in marriage either, but he'd been unemployed for nearly 2 years, dabbling in various ventures, but never maintaining interest in anything for more than a few months. His only real goal was to marry into wealth and secure his future. Conveniently, Sienna's family owned one of the largest pharmaceutical distribution networks in Southeast Asia. I assume you can see where this is heading. After several meetings, they realized they could solve each other's problems perfectly. Everything was falling into place for them until my speech exposed Danny at the wedding, and naturally, since their families had no knowledge of their private arrangement, Sienna had no choice but to leave. There was no way her conservative family would ever accept her marrying someone like Danny, especially after his friend had humiliated their entire dynasty in front of hundreds of high-profile guests. Even though their arrangement had been mutually beneficial, it was now completely unsalvageable, and they had to terminate everything immediately. He'd been living in Sienna's penthouse for the past several months and had even quit his last position as a pharmaceutical sales representative. Now, after this catastrophic wedding, even his own parents refused to take him back. He has nowhere to go, and finding employment won't be easy, since his resume shows nothing but a string of abandoned positions. Even if he does secure something, it will likely be an entry-level position far below his previous lifestyle. Now I'm being accused of ruining his life by being heartless, because Annie believes I should have confronted them privately instead of publicly humiliating them both and creating such devastating consequences for him. Even our research group has completely cut ties with both of them, and he's facing serious financial difficulties. For some inexplicable reason, she expects me to feel remorse about all of this. Honestly, I don't feel particularly sorry for Danny, nor do I believe his life is truly destroyed. All he needs to do is find a legitimate job and actually commit to it, instead of constantly seeking shortcuts through other people's wealth. If anything, I've probably done him a favor by forcing him to face reality, though given his character, he'll likely try to scam someone else. What does make me slightly uncomfortable is the public humiliation of both families. I'm certain my speech reflected poorly on both prestigious families, and I've known Danny's parents for years. They're genuinely good people. That's the only part of Annie's message that actually resonates with me, and I do feel somewhat guilty about that aspect. I recognize I could have handled this differently, confronted them privately, ended my relationship with Annie, and moved on in a more mature way. But now I've created this enormous scandal, and I feel conflicted about it. First update after 2 days. I haven't responded to Annie's message about Danny's situation. I refuse to feel guilty. If I reacted harshly to something that upset me, and that reflects poorly on others, that's hardly my problem. Yes, it probably hurt his parents, but honestly, I can't bring myself to feel too sorry about that. Despite them being good people, Danny was clearly not, and he absolutely deserved what happened. I have no intention of apologizing to anyone, not even his parents. I finally messaged Annie back, but only to tell her she needs to collect all her belongings from the penthouse immediately. Now that we're finished, I can't stand having her continue living here, and I couldn't bear looking at her things scattered around. I've gathered everything, packed it into boxes, and set them aside, so when she comes, she can quickly take them and leave without wasting time. She's the only person I haven't blocked yet, purely because I need to coordinate her moving out. After that's handled, she'll be blocked too. The rest of our research group is already blocked, with Danny being the first one I eliminated from my life. Now that some time has passed since the incident, all the emotions are really hitting me. I wasn't just betrayed by one or two people. I was betrayed by my girlfriend, my best friend, and an entire group I considered family, since we were all so incredibly close. Naturally, I've been extremely emotional about everything, but thankfully my biological family has been my rock through all of this. They've been visiting daily to ensure I'm taking care of myself and not spiraling into depression. I'm incredibly grateful for their support, since at least I have some people genuinely looking out for me. Second update, 9 days later. This morning, Annie messaged saying she would come by in the evening to collect her things. I agreed, assuming since she hadn't contacted me for over a week, she would simply take her belongings and leave. Instead, when she arrived and I started handing over the boxes, she insisted on searching the penthouse in case I'd missed anything. I was skeptical about letting her inside, knowing it would be an unnecessarily drawn-out process, but I couldn't refuse since I might have overlooked something, and I wanted this finished in one visit. So I allowed her in. She inspected each room, gathering a few additional items I'd missed, but then instead of leaving, she started lingering in the living room, creating an unbearably awkward atmosphere. When I finally asked if she was planning to leave, she revealed she really wanted to talk, hoping that after some time had passed, I'd be more open to addressing our problems. It was infuriating. She spoke as if years had elapsed since the incident when it hadn't even been 2 weeks. Also, I saw no reason to address any problems with her. She cheated with my best friend who was about to get married. They were the problem, not me. I reminded her that my message had been clear. She was only welcome to collect her belongings. Now that was done, there was no reason for further discussion. But she started arguing, claiming that although she had cheated, I wasn't entirely perfect either, and I needed to stop acting as if this was completely her fault. Until then, I'd remained curt but controlled, despite my growing irritation. But when she implied I shared blame for her infidelity, I completely lost control and started shouting. I couldn't believe she had the audacity to suggest I had somehow driven her to cheat. While I acknowledge I'm not perfect, her tone clearly implied that I had forced her into Danny's arms. I knew exactly what she would say next. We'd been having problems because I wanted to settle down, get married, and start a family while she wasn't ready. She painted herself as the victim, claiming she wasn't prepared for such commitment because it was too significant a decision. She criticized me for trapping her in our relationship, saying that in 10 years with me, she'd never experienced life independently. We'd always considered each other in everything, and apparently that meant she didn't even know who she was. Somehow that was my fault. I couldn't believe she thought these were valid justifications. If after 10 years together, she had such massive issues with committing to me, then clearly we wanted very different things from life. She could have either communicated openly about it or simply ended our relationship. Instead, she chose to cheat, wanting to explore other options while keeping me as a safety net. And somehow, I was terrible for not accepting that arrangement. Her victim mentality and attempt to equate our faults enraged me so much that I screamed myself hoarse. Yet she continued defending herself, insisting she'd been under immense pressure from me and that Danny understood her in ways I never did. I repeatedly asked her to leave, but she persisted, demanding I acknowledge my imperfections and admit I'd been just as toxic as her. I should have called security, but I was so agitated it didn't even occur to me. Eventually, I was so completely done with her justifications that I simply walked to the door, opened it, and stood silently beside it while she continued defending herself. It took several excruciating minutes for her to get the message, and it took every ounce of my self-control not to respond to her ridiculous arguments. I just remained silent, standing by the open door, waiting for her to leave. Finally, she walked out, but not before delivering one last jab, telling me I could pretend to be righteous all I wanted, but deep down, we both knew it took two people to destroy this relationship. I agree completely. It took her and Danny, but I didn't bother saying that. It would have just sparked another endless argument, and I had neither the time nor energy for it. After she left, I shut the door and tried to calm my racing heart. Even during our relationship, she had always struggled to admit when she was wrong, but back then I found it somewhat endearing. Today, it was absolutely infuriating, and I'm relieved she left when she did, because I was close to throwing something at her. Final update 2 years later. It's been 2 years since my last update. I've been contemplating posting here for months and finally logged in today to share how everything turned out. Career-wise, things are exceptional, even better than before. I've become somewhat obsessed with fitness, which has been tremendously beneficial for my mental health. I've maintained absolutely zero contact with anyone from our research group for these 2 years, and honestly couldn't care less about their lives. My family has been there for me through every step of recovery, ensuring my well-being, and that's all I need. I have fewer friends now, just a couple from high school and some colleagues, but at least they're genuine people who truly care about me. Recently, I've started seeing someone. Dating was completely off limits for me this past year, as I was still processing the trauma from my previous relationship. Then, at a biochemistry conference, a colleague introduced me to her research assistant, Athena. She's incredibly brilliant, genuinely kind, and I felt an immediate connection unlike anything I'd experienced before. My colleague arranged a casual dinner meeting, and we've been dating since then. I've been completely transparent with Athena about my past relationship and its duration, explaining why I need to take things slowly before getting serious. She's remarkably understanding and respectful of my boundaries. She's even told me she's willing to wait because she believes we're perfectly matched intellectually and emotionally. Most importantly, we share the same vision about marriage and family. She wants exactly what I do, and I finally feel I've found someone truly compatible. Ironically, Annie and Danny got married 3 months after my last update, but their marriage collapsed within a year. I learned this from a former grad school classmate who keeps tabs on everyone's lives. I can't pretend to feel any sympathy for them. That would be an outright lie. But I hope this serves as a lesson to them about not destroying others' trust as they destroyed mine. Though given their characters, they'll likely repeat their patterns. Our entire former research group has scattered. Some moved abroad for positions, others switched industries entirely, and a few tried to reconnect with me, but I maintained my distance. The scandal effectively ended many of the friendships within the group, though I heard some still keep in touch secretly. The biotech industry isn't particularly large, and occasionally I hear rumors about Danny struggling to maintain employment, still attempting to charm his way into prestigious positions rather than earning them. Annie apparently relocated to another country's research facility, starting fresh where her reputation hasn't preceded her. I feel I'm truly past everything that happened. The betrayal no longer haunts me, and I've rebuilt my life in ways I never expected. My company has expanded internationally, I've published several groundbreaking research papers, and most importantly, I've learned to trust again, both in relationships and friendships. The experience taught me valuable lessons about genuine relationships versus superficial ones. While the betrayal was devastating, it ultimately freed me from people who never truly cared about me. Now I'm surrounded by authentic relationships built on mutual respect and honesty, and I'm genuinely happy. Looking back, I wouldn't change how I handled the situation. Sometimes public exposure of betrayal, while messy and dramatic, serves as a necessary catalyst for change. It forced everyone involved to face the consequences of their actions instead of continuing their comfortable deceptions. While the method was dramatic, the truth needed to come out, and I'm at peace with how everything unfolded. The person I am today, successful, fit, emotionally healthy, and in a promising relationship with someone who shares my values emerge from that crucible of betrayal stronger and wiser. Sometimes it takes losing everything you thought you had to find everything you truly need.